The return of Zora. The road to Umudara was the kind of road Google Maps would politely ignore. Dirt, more pothole than path, and surrounded by tall trees that whispered secrets with every breeze. Zora's dusty Corolla coughed in protest as it climbed the last hill before the village. She looked out at the horizon, low, rolling hills painted in the orange light of the evening sun, and the unmistakable scent of red dust and wood smoke. She hadn't been here in 15 years. Not since she was a small girl, legs skinny and wild, always getting into things she shouldn't. But now she was back. Not because she wanted to be. No, life had dragged her back like an angry aunt yanking a stubborn child by the ear. Her father, the famous Professor Ikachukwu, lecturer, anthropologist, perpetual button shirt wearer, had died suddenly. Heart attack, they said. Just like that. 1 minute giving a TED talk in Lagos about African cosmology, the next minute collapsing behind a podium mid-sentence. Zara, his only child, flew back from London and made the arrangements like a robot. She thought she was done. Then came the letter. Written in her father's unmistakable handwriting. Sealed. Posted the day before he died. Zara. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. Go to Umudara. Stay with Aunt Adan. There is something you must see. Don't trust the surface. Love always. Dad. Zara had half a mind to ignore it. But curiosity is a dangerous creature, it whispers louder than grief. How's the welcome that wasn't? Aunt Adan's compound stood at the edge of Umudara like it was keeping one foot in the forest and one in the village. The house was old but strong. Mud walls, thatched roof. Chickens scurried across the path like they had important errands. Aunt Adan was waiting at the gate, wrapped in a faded wrapper, a wooden spoon in one hand and a stare that could make onions cry. You came, she said. I did, Zara replied. You don't look like someone who believes in spirits. I don't. But I believe in ghosts that write letters. Aunt Adan snorted. Come inside. The forest has ears. The house smelled of herbs, ash, and something else Zara couldn't place, like rain on stone. She dropped her bags, took a sip of water from a calabash, and sat quietly as her aunt stirred a pot of ogbono soup. You will sleep in your father's old room, Adan said without looking at her. He kept things. Maybe too many things. Zara raised an eyebrow. What kind of things? Things that should be left in the dark. Naturally, Zara planned to go through every drawer the moment her aunt went to sleep. Like father, like daughter. Candle the first night. That night, the silence was different. Not city silence, the kind you only get when your phone is off and your emails stop pinging. No, this was the kind of silence that listened back. Zara lay on the bed staring at the ceiling fan, which rotated like it was carrying the weight of ancestral disappointment. The room was filled with old books, maps, and a wooden staff leaning against the wall, carved with tiny snake shapes. Her dad's journal was on the bedside table, locked. She closed her eyes. Then came the dream. Zizizi the dream. She was standing in the forest. Not any forest, the forest. The one people said no one should enter. The air was thick. The trees leaned in too close, like they wanted to whisper secrets. Something moved through the leaves, slow, deliberate. A voice spoke in Igbo, soft but firm. She has returned. The dust remembers. Then she saw it. A serpent, shimmering, silver and green, eyes like tiny moons, wrapped around the base of a tree. It didn't hiss. It didn't strike. It simply watched her. Then, it bowed. Zara gasped and opened her eyes. Snake the dust that drew. She sat up, heart pounding. The room was dark, the moonlight barely making it through the curtain. She reached for her phone. Dead. Of course. Then she saw it. On the floor. Dust. Red dust. Arranged not randomly, but intentionally, as though someone had swept their fingers through it. A spiral. No, not a spiral. A snake. A perfect outline. Zara didn't scream. She just whispered to herself. What in the ancestral hell is going on? Behind her, the wind stirred the curtain. Something rustled outside. And far off, in the direction of the forbidden forest, a drumbeat started. Just one. Then silence. The rooster in Umudara liked to announce the dawn 15 minutes early, an overeager timekeeper with feathers. Zara groaned, rolled over, and blinked at the thin morning light. Last night's dream still floated behind her eyes, the spiral dust snake, the silver coils, the single drumbeat that cut off like a snapped guitar string. Probably just jet lag and village jollof, she told herself. She splashed water on her face, tied her braids back, and stepped outside. The air smelled of dew, smoke, and that sweet scent red dust releases after midnight rain, a smell you can't bottle or explain, only breathe. A laugh in the trees. Zara's plan for the day was simple: locate coffee, avoid unsolicited folklore, and maybe peek at her father's locked journal again. But as she bent to greet Aunt Adan's ancient goat, something changed in the air. The leaves on the giant Iroko trees rustled without wind, and a sound drifted over the compound wall. A child's giggle. Light, bright, playful. The laughter floated from the forbidden forest, the one the elders called Ezinulo, the womb of the ancestors. Children never played there. Most grown-ups wouldn't even glance in that direction. The giggle came again, like tinkling bells. Zara straightened. Instinct said, "Not my business." Curiosity replied, "Too late." She pushed open the squeaky gate and followed the narrow path lined with crimson hibiscus. Each step crunched leaves that seemed to protest in tiny whispers. Mid-walk she realized she hadn't told Aunt Adan where she was going, but pride pushed her on. She would peek, confirm everything was normal, and head back before breakfast, no big deal. That was the plan, anyway. The line you do not cross. Ezinulo began exactly where the neat village footpath ended. One moment bare red soil, the next, a wall of green so thick it looked painted. Ancient ogbono and mahogany trees formed a natural arch, their branches knitted like cautious fingers. Zara paused at the invisible threshold. From here she could still turn around, drink Gary, pretend she'd never been curious. But the giggle, softer now, floated again, deeper inside. "Okay, kid, you win." She stepped across. The temperature dropped, like walking into a shaded cathedral. Light filtered through leaves in gold-green shards. The forest felt alive, breathing. Leaves crunched behind her. Zara spun. An old woman stood on the path as if she'd grown from the earth itself. Wrinkled skin like folded parchment, white hair braided into a single rope, milky eyes staring straight ahead, yet somehow focusing. A carved walking stick rested in her hand. Tiny cowrie shells dangled from her wrist and chimed like wind bells. "Good morning," Zara managed. The woman smiled, a crescent moon of old teeth. "Morning has nothing to do with it, Zara Ekachuku." Zara's stomach flipped. "You know my name." "I knew it before your father gave it to you," the woman said. "Some names live in the air long before mouths speak them." "Oh, great. And you are?" "People call me Momanjidika." "Me, I call myself Patient." Zara noticed the woman's pupils were clouded, blind, or nearly, but her gaze pierced like a spear. "You live out here." "I live where I'm needed. Today I'm needed in your path." A chill brushed Zara's neck. "Look, I heard a child laughing." "The forest laughs in many voices," Momanjidika interrupted. "Some belong to children, some to things far older. My advice, laugh back only if you understand the joke." She tapped her stick on the ground. Tap tap. Leaves fluttered as though startled. The forest watches, she said softly, and it remembers. Zara exhaled. Everyone keeps saying the forest watches. I'm trying to watch it back. Mama Njidika tilted her head. If a mirror stares at you, do you stare harder, or do you adjust your hair? Zara opened her mouth, closed it again. Conversations with this lady were clearly one-way riddles. The old woman pointed her stick toward a side track hardly wider than Zora's shoulders. Go home, child of dust. The answers you seek will find you without chasing them. Then, as silently as mist, Mama Njidika stepped backwards into a curtain of leaves and vanished. No rustle, no footfall. Gone. Zara touched the spot where the woman had stood, only air remained. Still bites wood. By noon the village square buzzed like a stirred anthill. Not with the usual gossip, but with panic. Zara arrived to see a half-circle of villagers around a young man named Chidi. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his shirt clung to him like damp paper. Aunt Adam pushed through the crowd carrying a calabash of soaked herbs. She shot a quick glare at Zora. Where have you been? Then knelt by Chidi. Zora squeezed closer and saw why the crowd buzzed. Chidi's forearms and neck were erupting in patches of shiny, overlapping scales, like fish skin, but dry and cracking. He wheezed, voice raspy, "It burns, it burns." What happened? Zara asked a nearby woman. The woman lowered her voice. Him and his friends cut firewood near Ezinulo. Chidi said sacred trees were just trees. He swung his machete and the branch bled like flesh. Before they reached the village, his skin changed. A burly elder named Okonkwo banged his walking staff on the ground. You see, the guardians punished disrespect. We told you all, leave the forest to the spirits. Somewhere in the crowd, a baby wailed. The sun hung motionless, as if the sky, too, was holding its breath. Zara stared at Chidi's scales, the same silver-green shade from her dream serpent. Coincidence? Or cosmic inside joke? She swallowed. Aunt Adan whispered a chant and dabbed paste on Chidi's arm. Steam rose, he screamed. Zara winced but noted the scales around the paste softened, normal skin reappearing beneath. Maybe tradition had teeth after all. When facts meet fangs. That evening Zara sat on the veranda, hugging her knees. The sky turned burnt orange, then deep violet. Aunt Adan emerged with 2 wooden cups of millet drink and passed one over. So, our aunt began, you went to the forest. Zara stiffened. How did you? Dust on your shoes never lies, Adan said. And Mama Njidika came for her dream leaves. She said you are full of questions but short on patience. That is polite language for, this girl's head is coconut. Zara almost choked on her drink. She really said that? Adan's eyes danced with amusement. Then her expression turned solemn. Be careful, non-M. The forest chooses who can walk freely beneath its roof. Not everyone it calls survives the greeting. I'm not afraid, Zara said. Then she sighed. Okay, maybe I'm a little afraid. But I need answers. Dad wanted me to find something here. All I have is a locked journal and riddles. Aunt Adan ran a finger along the rim of her cup. Answers arrive in their own season. Seeds cannot be forced to sprout. Before Zara could argue, a hush fell over the compound. Goats stopped bleating. Crickets fell silent. Even the wind paused, as if nature pressed a finger to its lips. At the gate, something moved, a long, sinuous shape sliding across the red earth. Moonlight caught scales, silver-green, shimmering. The serpent from Zara's dream. Its body was thick as a man's bicep, head diamond-shaped with eyes bright amber. It stopped 2 arm lengths away and lifted its head, tongue flicking. Zara's paws hammered. Every logical cell screamed run. Yet curiosity pinned her feet. The snake didn't coil to strike. It seemed inquisitive, like it had traveled miles just to confirm she existed. Aunt Adan didn't flinch. She placed her cup gently on the step, then bowed her head. Whispered words Zora couldn't catch drifted in the air like drifting smoke. The serpent lowered itself, glided sideways along the veranda edge, and disappeared beneath a flowering bush. No rattle, no threat, just departure. Silence poured back into the compound. Crickets resumed their serenade. Aunt Adan exhaled. Well, the forest has delivered its message. What message? Zara croaked. That you are seen. Zara shook her head. This is impossible. It's probably a regular python, maybe someone's escaped pet or, Adan chuckled. Pet? In Umudora. Even our goats refuse leashes. She became serious. Child, you witnessed a guardian. They rarely step beyond the tree line. For it to come here means the boundary between worlds is thin tonight. Thin? Zara looked at her hands, still trembling. What happens when the boundary breaks? Adan gazed toward the dark forest. Fireflies blinked like scattered stars. Then spirit and flesh dance as one, and those unprepared get trampled. A night of reckoning. Zara tried to sleep, but the thatched roof seemed to amplify every forest whisper. Branches creaked like door hinges, owls called her name, or so she imagined, and somewhere far off, a drum pounded the same beat she'd heard in her dream, doom, doom, doom. At midnight she gave up, lit a kerosene lantern, and flipped through her father's journal again. The brass lock still mocked her, solid, unbreakable without tools. She traced the carved symbol on the cover, an infinity serpent swallowing its tail. Dad, what were you hiding? She wondered. Thunder rumbled though the sky remained clear. The wind changed, carrying the faint scent of crushed herbs and smoke, familiar now. Mom and Jidika's presence seemed to linger, unseen but heavy. Zara whispered the blind woman's words, the forest watches. It remembers. Then she added her own, and tonight, it visited. Somewhere outside, a single child's laugh echoed once, quick as a hiccup, then faded. Zara shivered. For the first time since arriving, she considered locking the door. But a strange calm settled over her. The snake's gaze had been unsettling yet oddly gentle, as if saying we are not enemies, yet. She left the door ajar. Dawn verdict. When dawn finally peered through the bamboo window, Zora stepped out and found Aunt Adan crouched beside a pot of steaming oji. You did not scream, Adan said without turning. That is good. Did the snake return? No. But its shadow was enough. Chidi's fever broke at sunrise. The scales faded. Zara blinked. So he's cured. He will carry a small patch, right here. She tapped her wrist. A reminder scar. But he lives. Zara sank onto a stool. A snake shows up in my yard, and a man halfway across the village hills. You expect me to believe that's cause and effect? Believe, or observe. Your choice changes nothing. Adan handed her a steaming calabash. Drink, city girl. The day will ask more questions of you. Zara took a careful sip. The thick millet drink coated her tongue, sweet with honey, spiced with ginger. Comforting. Or maybe Aunt laced it with calm-down herbs, she mused. Across the courtyard, dust motes danced in early light. For the first time, Zara noticed faint footprints leading from the gate to her door, serpent-shaped smears in the red dirt, ending exactly where the snake had paused. She traced them with her eyes until they blended into ordinary chicken scratches. A ridiculous thought visited her. What if the serpent was less warning and more invitation? Invitation to what? She had no clue. But if the forest was breathing, maybe it was also speaking. And ignoring a speaking forest felt like ignoring a phone call from fate. She finished her drink, squared her shoulders, and met Aunt Adan's gaze. I need to go back in. Adan's eyebrows rose like prayer. The coconut learns nothing from hammer once, it needs the second hit. Zora laughed despite herself. Call me stubborn. But I'm not leaving Umudora until I know the truth. The old woman nodded slowly, respect mixing with worry. Then may your eyes be sharper than your fears. And remember, not every path that opens is meant for your feet. Understood, Zora said, though her heartbeat suggested otherwise. She secured her boots, slung a small bag over her shoulder, water, flashlight, her father's locked journal, because why not existential props? And walked to the edge of the compound. The village morning bustle faded behind her, goats bleated disapproval, roosters sentenced late sleepers to consciousness. She paused at the threshold of Ezinyolo, where sunlight ended and cool shadow began. A breeze blew out, smelling of marigold and something ancient, the scent of pages older than paper. Round 2, she muttered. And stepped in. The forest breathed, drawing her into its lungs. Packing, plans, and a dead battery. Zara woke with the stubborn decision already pressed against her mind like a sticky note, leave Umudora today. She had spent 2 nights listening to the forest breathe, watching snake-shaped footprints appear and disappear, and feeling the village eyes follow her like curious fireflies. Answers were still hidden, but fear was growing bigger than curiosity. Abuja has bookstores and electricity, she muttered while folding her jeans. And 0 mystical reptiles. By 7:30 the rising sun glazed the red earth a bright copper. Zara hustled to Aunt Adan's courtyard, where her dusty Corolla waited under a pawpaw tree. She threw her backpack in, turned the key, and... click. Silence. She tried again. Click click. Nothing. The battery, healthy yesterday, now sounded as lively as a brick. A passing schoolboy paused at the gate. Auntie, your mother is sleeping, he said with the grin of someone enjoying good gossip. Zara forced a smile. It will wake up. Except it did not. She flagged a motorcycle mechanic, who tested the battery with a rusty multimeter and frowned. It die finish, like spirit drink. Zara sighed. Can you jumpstart it? He attached cables, revved his bike, but the Corolla stayed silent. The mechanic shrugged in apology, accepted a bottle of malt, and rode off. A coincidence, she told herself. Cars die every day. Yet unease crawled under her skin. 2. The GPS that spun in circles. Undeterred, Zara grabbed her father's old motorcycle, a clattering 125 cubic centimeters he used during fieldwork. She kicked the starter, the engine sputtered, coughed, and settled into a ragged purr. Progress. Helmet on, she zoomed toward the single road that connected Umudora to the 3rd highway. Her phone, finally charged on Aunt Adan's solar panel, showed a blue GPS arrow. Destination, Abuja. For 5 minutes the arrow behaved. Then, as the forest thinned and farmland spread out, the screen began to jitter. The road in real life stayed straight, but the map spun like a dizzy compass. The arrow pointed first east, then south, then turned into a grey circle that pulsed, searching for signal. Birds scattered overhead. A sudden gust rattled yam leaves. Zora slowed. The motorcycle rattled harder, as if offended by her hesitation. She shoved the phone into her pocket. Old-fashioned navigation it is, she decided. But 3 bends later she skidded to a halt. A bonnet-high flood covered the path, silent, unmoving, like a sheet of glass. No rain cloud hung above, only blue sky and painted-on sun. Behind her, dry dust lifted from her tire tracks. Ahead, water spread in both directions, swallowing cassava fields that had been dry the day before. Zora's throat tightened. Impossible. She dismounted, dipped a finger, cool, real water. A frog leaped from a submerged anthill and landed on the bike's wheel. There was no bridge route, no side track, no friendly canoe. 10 kilometers of water stood between her and the highway. Not coincidence, her heartbeat whispered. Invitation declined. She turned the bike around and thundered back to Umudora, GPS still spinning like a mad clock. 3. Nightfall whispers. That evening Zara sat on her bed, legs crossed, staring at her father's locked journal. Moonlight striped the floorboards. The village generator had coughed to a stop hours earlier, and insects chirped a relentless lullaby. She remembered Momanjidika, the forest watches. It remembers. She remembered the python on the veranda. She remembered Chidi's scales and the way they melted at dawn. And she remembered the flood that arrived from an empty sky. For the first time the locked journal felt less like a family keepsake and more like a lifeline. She shook it, nothing rattled. She traced the Ouroboros engraving. Dad, what secret got you killed? Exhaustion dragged her eyelids down. She curled under the thin cotton sheet and surrendered to sleep. 4. The dream of ancestral fire. Darkness parted like curtains. Zara stood barefoot in a huge circular hut lit by dozens of clay lamps. Walls were painted with spirals, pythons, and rising suns. Thick incense curled in the air. At the hut center burned a low, steady fire. Figures emerged, men and women in indigo wrappers, faces decorated with white chalk lines. Their eyes shone but their feet made no sound. One by one they circled the fire until an unbroken ring surrounded Zara. A tall woman stepped forward. Her hair was threaded with cowries, a jagged scar crossed her cheek. When she spoke, her voice held the echo of drumskins. We welcome the daughter who forgot. Another elder, a man with a staff of ebony, added. You carry a mark. You were chosen. The ring of ancestors hummed a bass note. Flames brightened, leaking higher, shadows leapt across the mirrors, making painted serpents slither. Zara felt her throat tighten. Chosen for what? The woman pointed to Zara's left wrist. There, faint but unmistakable, lay a pale, twisting scar shaped like a tiny snake eating its tail. A mark she never noticed, or never remembered. Memory flared, a childhood sin. She was 6, sitting on her father's lap while Aunt Adan drew wet chalk symbols on her arm. A python's skin lay on a mat. Elders chanted. She tasted honey and pepper on her tongue. Her father whispered, just a naming ritual, my star. It ties you to your roots. But something had gone wrong, someone shouted, the python hissed, smoke filled the air, and her father scooped her away. After that day, no one spoke of the ritual again. They moved to Lagos, and silence grew over the memory like moss. The tall woman now raised a wooden mask, dark, oval, with a serpent carved across the brow. The guardian waits, but the vessel doubts. She placed the mask at Zora's feet. The fire snapped. Ashes spiraled upward like grey snow. Zara shook her head, fear pulsing. I can't. This isn't me. The elder's chant rumbled like distant thunder. A tree that forgets its roots topples in the storm. The hut spun. Lamps flickered out. Aya became darkness. 5. The choice of flames. Zara jolted awake, sweat soaking her shirt. Midnight again. Crickets chirped, a dog barked far away. She kicked off the sheet and gasped. On the floor lay a wooden mask. Dark, oval, serpent carved across the brow. Exactly like the dream. Her skin prickled. How did it get here? She picked it up. It was warm. She smelled faint incense. Panic rose like fire. Someone is messing with me, or something is. Acting on raw fear, Zara snatched a kerosene lantern, tiptoed outside, and marched toward the cooking pit. She dumped dry maize husks into the basin, splashed kerosene, and struck a match. Flames roared. Stay in your stories, she hissed to the mask. Stay in your forest. She hurled it into the fire. The wood cracked, releasing a breath of scent, earth, rain, pepper. Green flames licked the serpent carving. Behind her, wind slapped the plantain leaves. A hunched shape moved at the edge of darkness. Zara spun, heart in her throat, but saw only waving shadows. When she turned back, the mask was already blackened. A corner crumbled to ash. She waited until nothing but glowing coals remained, then stomped them for good measure. With shaking hands she returned to her room, barred the door, and buried her head under the pillow. Dawn. Over. Good night. Sleep, however, stayed far away, like a scolded cat. 6. Morning of the Serpent. First light crept into the room, timid and pale. Birds chirped. Zara rolled over, and froze. A python lay beside her on the mat. As thick as her forearm, nearly 2 meters long, shimmering silver green. Its head rested inches from her shoulder. She opened her mouth, but no scream emerged. Terror pinned her still, every instinct screaming run. While another voice whispered wait. The python's belly muscles rippled. It lifted its head, tongue flicking lightning fast. Then, instead of striking, it began to wriggle, slow waves running from tail to head. Skin loosened. A split opened along its snout, and the serpent crawled forward out of its own skin, leaving a perfect hollow sleeve behind. Zara watched, wide-eyed, as the fresh, gleaming snake slipped silently off the mat, across the clay floor, and out through a gap under the door. Not once did it lunge or hiss. Not once did it look scared. It simply left. Inside the discarded skin, something glimmered. Zara reached with trembling fingers and lifted a stone the size of a quail egg, smooth, translucent, pulsing with soft inner light, as if a candle glowed inside. She whispered, "What are you?" The stone warmed in her palm. For a heartbeat she fancied she heard distant singing, low, layered voices echoing underwater. A knock rattled the door. "Zara!" Aunt Adan called. "Are you awake?" "Oui." She pushed the door open, took one look at the shed skin and glowing stone, and stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes widened, but not with surprise, more like weary recognition. "It has begun," she said quietly. Zara swallowed. "I burned the mask. I tried to stop it." Adan shook her head. "Fire cannot erase a name written before birth." She pointed to the stone. "That is the Odinola heart, spirit seed. It appears only when the guardian chooses its vessel." "Vessel?" Zara's voice cracked. "I'm not a vessel. I'm a data analyst." "Then you are a data analyst who must learn old data," Adan answered, surprisingly gentle. "It's something. You will need strength." Zara stared at the glowing stone. "You want me to, what, carry this around?" "Keep it close. It will guide or warn. Depends on how you listen." Outside, the village bell clanged, 3 urgent strikes. A boy shouted down the path, "Mama Adan. The flood water is rising again, without rain." Adan pressed 2 fingers to her forehead in silent prayer. "The land is restless. Your choices feed its mood." Zara clenched her jaw. "Then I choose to end whatever curse my father started." Aunt Adan nodded. "Good. But curses do not end with stubbornness alone. They end with understanding." She lifted the snake skin with surprising tenderness, rolled it neatly, and placed it in a woven pouch. "Come. Elders meet at the shrine. They will want to see this." Zara tucked the stone into her pocket, heart pounding. "And if they blame me? Then we show them the truth, that the forest chooses, but humans decide whether that choice heals or harms." Together they stepped into the brightening courtyard. Warm wind carried the distant roar of water where no river should be. Zara glanced at the trilling of Ezignolo, which seemed to sway even without breeze, as if inner breath fluttered its leaves. The python's gift paused against her thigh like a second heartbeat. The message felt clear: running is over. The story moves forward, through you. She squared her shoulders and followed Aunt Adan toward the shrine, unaware that high above, circling hawks traced the ancient snake spiral in the sky. The story in the blood. The elders met beneath a giant oak tree whose branches spread like open arms. Red dust swirled between their feet, and the late morning sun painted every wrinkle in gold. Zara stood beside Aunt Adan, clutching the glowing spirit stone inside her pocket. The road python's skin rested on a woven mat before the council. Chief Okonkwo's voice boomed. "Child, why has the forest marked you?" Zara swallowed. "I'm trying to learn that myself." Adan stepped forward. "Because our blood has carried the guardianship of Umudara for 7 generations. My brother, her father, should have inherited the role, but he left." She exhaled a thin line of grief. "When he moved to Lagos, the chain broke." Murmurs passed through the circle like ripples on a pond. Elder Ijeoma tapped her staff. "The forest has waited a long time. Perhaps it reaches now for the next link." Zara blinked. "My father never told me. He studied myths, but he hated superstition." "Not hate," Adan corrected softly. "Fear. The burden frightened him. He ran so you would never carry it. But destiny is patient." Zara's knees felt weak. She pictured her father's kind eyes, his laughter over weekend pancakes. Had he been hiding sorrow behind every smile? Chief Okonkwo raised a brow. "Will you accept what he rejected?" Zara glanced at the pouch containing the snake skin, then at the forest wall swaying in a wind she could not feel. Her answer came from somewhere beneath her ribs. "I will learn," she said. "And decide." The elders nodded. A path opened, one lined with more questions than answers. 2. The last echo keeper. That afternoon, Zara followed Aunt Adan to Mama Njidika's hut deep in Ezinulo. The blind woman waited on a stool, eyes cloudy, hands resting on her stick. Yet her smile felt like dawn. "Welcome, child who hears whispers," Mama said. Zara knelt. "You knew my father." "I knew his footsteps, full of worry." Njidika's voice fell to a hush. "He asked me to hide the future from you. But futures are river fish, they slip between fingers." She pointed to a row of gourds hanging from the ceiling. "I am the last echo keeper. My task is to read the forest size, bird flight, ant trails, cracked snail shells. Every sign is a syllable. I translate for those who forgot the language." Zara's eyes widened. "You can understand the forest." "I can listen," Mama corrected. "Understanding is for spirits alone." She tapped Zara's pocket. "The stone speaks too, in light and warmth. Learn its accent." Then her face grew grave. "Tonight your initiation begins. Dream deeply. Walk bravely. Return before cockcrow." Adan clasped Zara's shoulder. "I will prepare your path." Zara's stomach fluttered like trapped moths. Yet under the fear lay a strange excitement, like discovering a secret level in a familiar game. 3. The first trial, dream of dust and drum. Night draped Umudara in indigo silk. Adan drew white chalk sigils on Zara's forehead and wrist, then mixed herbs into hot water. "Drink. It will open the door." The tea tasted of pepper, mint, and smoke. Zara lay on a mat inside Mama Njidika's hut, the spirit stone resting on her chest. Drumbeats somewhere far away matched her heartbeat until they felt the same. Sleep slid over her eyes. She stood on a ridge above the village. Lightning flashed purple though no clouds hung. Below, she saw herself as a toddler seated beside a python large as a canoe. Elders chanted. Her father lifted her tiny hand to the snake's head, a pledge of harmony. Suddenly a gunshot echoed. The scene shattered into dust, swirling into the night sky. She turned and faced a towering figure made entirely of twining vines and shimmering scales. 2 golden eyes glowed inside. "Keeper," the being rumbled, voice like stones moving underground. "Name us." Zara's tongue stuck, no words came. "A keeper who forgets is a gate without hinges." The ground cracked. She fell, tumbling through darkness until a burst of white light. Zara jerked awake, panting. The hut was still dark, but the spirit stone on her chest glowed bright amber. Outside, cicadas screamed like faulty bricks. She waited for dawn, heart racing. For lessons in shadow and leaf. In grey morning light, Mama Njidika handed her a small calabash. "Return this water to the spring beyond the 3-root tree. On the way, notice everything, the way lizards bask, the shape of fallen leaves. Echo keeping is seeing with your whole skin." Zara trekked barefoot, senses sharpened. She saw a row of soldier ants marching in a perfect spiral, leaves forming a star, a blue kingfisher perched on a stump shaped like a hand. Each side tingled the spirit stone warmly, as if confirming checkpoints. At the spring, she poured the water. As the last drop fell, a ripple spread across the pool, showing her reflection morphing into that vine-scaled figure. She whispered, "I will remember." The reflection returned to normal. 5. Fangs at the riverside. Late afternoon found Zara near the yam fields helping Adan collect utozi leaves. Children played tag. Suddenly a scream tore the air. A boy, barely 8, staggered from brush clutching his ankle. Blood oozed. 2 puncture wounds swelled dark purple. "Viper," Adan breathed. Villagers panicked, some ran for sticks, some for prayer beads. Zara's lungs froze until the spirit stone burned hot in her pocket, as if nudging her ribs. She knelt by the boy. "What's your name?" "Titob," he whimpered. "Breathe, Tob. We'll fix this." Memory surfaced, Adan teaching her 3 herbs for snake bites, noni oka leaf to draw venom, crushed akirika seed to slow blood, salt water rinse to cool swelling. She backed orders. "Fetch fresh clay and salt." 2 teens sprinted off. She chewed noni oka into a pulp while Adan mashed akirika. Zara packed the pulp on the puncture, then wrapped clay like a bandage. Tob's breathing slowed. Purple hue lightened. An hour later the boy sat up, sipping millet porridge. Crowds murmured, fear turning to relief, then admiration. Okonkwo the elder clasped Zara's shoulders. "Today you echoed your aunt's wisdom. The forest is." Zara blushed under the praise. Yet inside she wondered, did I save him, or did the guardian guide me? 6. The omen of empty mouths. That night, unease settled like fog. Goats bleated, but none touched their feed. Even juicy cassava peels lay untouched. In Umudara, goats refusing food was equal to church bells ringing at midnight, a sure omen. A farmer ran to the elders' courtyard. "Not one goat ate today," he cried. They stared at the mountain as if waiting. Zara remembered the purple lightning in her dream. "A storm is coming," she whispered. Mama Njidika appeared, guided by Adan's arm. Though blind, her gaze cut through panic. "Echo tells me wind will roar without cloud," she declared. "Rain will fall from clear sky. If hearts are not humble, water will rise above roofs." The council erupted. Some wanted to sacrifice a white cock. Others insisted on fasting. Zara stepped forward. Fear fluttered, but the stone warmed. "We need truth, not panic. Let me consult the forest." Okonkwo hesitated. "Alone?" "She will not be alone," Mama Njidika said firmly. "I will walk the dream path with her. Adan will guard her flesh." Thus, a plan formed. At moonrise, Zara would sit in vigil at the shrine. If she heard the forest song, she might guide the village through the coming storm. 7. Vigil of the Whispering Shrine. The shrine sat at the forest root, built of clay bricks and roofed with palm leaves. Inside, carved masks lined the walls, eyes hollow yet watchful. Zara knelt on woven mats, the python skin draped across her lap, spirit stone glowing faintly. Mom and Jidika sat opposite, eyes closed, humming a low drone. Incense burned, smelling of bitter cola and rain. Listen beyond your ears, the old woman murmured. Let the echoes find you. Zara steadied her breath. Outside, frogs croaked and nightjars called. Then, below that, a different rhythm, the rustle of leaves without wind, the soft thunk of mango falling on earth, the crackle of far-off lightning though no clouds rolled. Sound became pattern, pattern became voice. Keeper, keeper. She saw again the vine-scaled guardian, but smaller now, almost human-sized. You mend what was broken, it said. But the land still tests. Storm returns balance. A memory flickered, her father writing notes by candlelight. He had tried to map weather anomalies, floods where drought should reign. Was Umudora's curse bigger than the village? Zara opened her eyes. The incense had burnt low, Mom and Jidika's head nodded, listening in her own realm. Zara whispered, how do we prepare? At that moment, a cold gust blew through the shrine, snuffing candles. The spirit stone blazed white. Outside, the first goat bleated a warning howl, half scream, half trumpet. Zara stood. We have until dawn. 8. Rallying the village. She and Adan roused the sleeping household. Under a fearless sky full of stars, they guided families to higher ground, the old colonial school perched on a hill. Children carried stools, men lugged sacks of gari, women tied babies to backs. Some mocked the clear sky. No clouds. No storm. But as they argued, wind rose, swirling dust into miniature tornadoes. Dry leaves flew like birds. Even skeptics hurried up the slope. At the hilltop, Okonkwo led a quick prayer. Mom and Jidika stood, arms raised, chanting words older than the road. Zara placed the spirit stone on a cracked drum, its glow pulsed, matching Jidika's chant. Then, as if a curtain dropped, the sky flashed emerald. Thunder roared, not above, but seeming to rise from the earth. Invisible water hammered rooftops in the valley. Within minutes, sheets of rain marched across fields, flooding low huts. Lightning spiderwebbed the horizon, yet stars still twinkled overhead, a storm with no clouds. The people gasped. Some cried. Zara's knees buckled, but she stayed standing, chanting with Njidika. The python skin fluttered in the gale like a banner. After what felt like hours, the rain stopped. Silence heavier than any sound cloaked the land. A rooster, confused by the darkness, crowed. Dawn slipped over the hills, pink and shy. From the schoolyard they saw water filling the valley like a giant mirror. But every life stood safely on high ground. Cheers and tears mingled. Elders shook Zora's hand, calling her Deda Odinola, daughter of tradition. Children flocked around, touching the spirit stone in awe. Zara felt dizzy, half floating on gratitude, half anchored by responsibility. She looked to Mom and Jidika. The old woman smiled, eyes glowing behind cloudy veils. The storm tested the chain, Jidika said. It did not break. 9. Echoes of a new day. By afternoon, floodwaters began to retreat. Goats bleated happily and nibbled fresh leaves. Women washed mud-soaked pots with laughter of relief. Zara sat beneath the okwa tree, tracing the tiny snake scar on her wrist. Aunt Adan joined her, handing roasted plantain. You carried the echoes well, Adan said. I was terrified, Zara admitted. Adan chuckled. Courage is fear in uniform. Zara nodded toward the forest. Will it ever stop testing me? The forest doesn't test, Adan replied. It converses. Keep listening, and the language becomes easier. Zara bit into the plantain, sweet and hot. A gentle breeze stirred leaves overhead, and for a heartbeat she heard distant laughter, childlike, playful, the same that had lured her weeks ago. Only now, the sound felt like a greeting, not a trick. 10. A voice inside the journal. That evening she finally unlocked her father's journal. The brass class surrendered under a whisper chant Mama Njidika taught her. Pages filled with sketches of storms, serpents, and village rituals unfurled like secret maps. One passage caught her eye, ink-faded but urgent. If I fail to serve, the burden will pass to Zara. May she forgive me. May she be braver than I. Zara wiped a tear. I forgive you, Dad. And I'm trying. She placed the spirit stone on the page. Light seeped into the ink, making words glow as if freshly written. New sentences appeared. The Echo Keeper will guide you. Trust the serpent with 2 songs. Zara exhaled, both comforted and unnerved. She closed the book gently. 11. Gathering Echoes. At dusk, villagers gathered for Thanksgiving beside the school. Drums pounded, feet stamped, and songs rose, joyous, raw. Zara danced, laughter spilling like palm wine. When she spun, she saw Mama Njidika seated, eyes closed, lips curved in contentment. The old woman's sightless gaze turned toward Zara. Keeper of Echoes, she called, voice carrying over drums, the path ahead is long, but tonight the land sings your name. Cheers erupted. Zara's cheeks flushed. She knew storms would come again, riddles would grow harder, and fear would return. Yet tonight, the village breathed with her, not against her. She raised her hands to the star-speckled sky. Somewhere beyond the trees, a serpent, her serpent, slid through moonlit undergrowth, scales whispering secrets she would someday decode. The chain was mended. The conversation had only begun. The serpent's gift. 1. The ritual of reckoning. The village square was buzzing with tension. Drums beat slowly, deliberate and deep, like a warning heartbeat. Children were kept indoors. Goats tied tighter than usual. Even the air felt different, like the wind was trying to decide whether to stay or run. At the center, a ritual circle had been drawn in white chalk and red clay. Calabashes filled with palm wine, kola nuts, and herbs lay around a low-burning fire. The elders sat in a ring, faces painted with sacred ash. Zara stood just outside the circle, barefoot, wearing a wrapper of green and brown, the forest colors. She clutched the spirit stone in her palm. Aunt Adan whispered, "This is not a performance. It's a promise." Zara nodded, heart pounding like the drums. "I know." Then, silence. The drums stopped. The birds stopped. Even the goats shut up. From the forest edge came a soft rustling. Then a louder one. Then the ground began to shake. Someone gasped. A woman screamed. And then it appeared. 2. The two-headed visitor. Slithering across the dust like a river of scales came the largest python anyone had ever seen. But this was no ordinary serpent. It had 2 heads, both identical, both watching the crowd like twin guardians deciding who lived and who learned. People panicked. Villagers screamed and scattered. Some threw powder. Others ran for their homes. One man even dived into a calabash of palm wine, not his bravest moment. But Zara did not move. The python slid straight into the circle. Its heads rose high, taller than a grown man. One faced the elders. The other turned to her. Zara's knees gave way, but not from fear. She knelt. The spirit stone burned in her hand. Words bubbled inside her, strange words, old and forgotten, yet somehow familiar. They slipped from her tongue like water over stone. Odinola Echeta. No MD Nu. Ismiri, we welcome you. Gasps rippled through the elders. Okonkwo dropped his staff. Adan covered her mouth. She was speaking the forgotten tongue, the language of the shrinekeepers, lost for generations. The serpent bowed both heads. And then, with a deep hiss, it slid forward, circled her once, and vanished into the earth like it had never been there, leaving behind only a swirl of dust and stunned silence. 3. When the land breathes again. Within minutes of the serpent's disappearance, the sky cleared. The wind turned warm and sweet, carrying the scent of new rain and ripe fruit. People stepped out cautiously, blinking at the light. Then the miracle happened. Someone shouted from the edge of the village, "The yam vines. They are blooming again." Another voice cried, "My cassava patch. It's green." Everywhere that had been dead from flood now stirred with life. Crops once thought lost were sprouting. Even the goats had started eating again, like nothing ever happened, goats being goats, of course. Chief Okonkwo approached Zora, eyes moist. "We have not seen such a sign in 50 years. Adan whispered, "The guardian accepted your voice. You are now a bridge, not just for us, but for the world." For Zara the Echo, online. That night, Zara sat under the old okwa tree with her phone in hand and heart in turmoil. She recorded a video, just her, the forest behind her, the glowing spirit stone on her lap. No makeup. No filter. Just truth. "I didn't come to Umudora to be a keeper of anything. I came to escape. But something ancient found me. Something that remembers where our stories come from. We are taught to fear what we don't understand. To laugh at old ways. But sometimes, the old ways are what's keeping the world spinning. This story isn't just about snakes and storms. It's about remembering who we are. And if you're willing to listen, really listen, the forest might whisper to you, too." She uploaded it without thinking twice. Within hours, the video exploded. Not just in Nigeria, but globally. People from across Africa messaged her, "This reminds me of my grandmother's story." Activists shared it. Cultural historians called it a living myth. Spiritual leaders said it proved the land still speaks. Even skeptics tagged her, "I don't believe in spirits, but this gave me chills." But Zara didn't care about the clout. She cared that people were finally listening. 5. One last visit. A week later, Zara stood again at the edge of Ezinulo, wearing the same forest-colored wrapper. The spirit stone hung around her neck on a leather cord. Behind her, the village buzzed with planting, laughter, and renewed life. Mama Njidika, thinner but still strong, walked beside her. "You've become what your father feared, and what he prayed for in secret." Zara smiled. "I still don't have all the answers." "You never will," Njidika said, chuckling. "But you have the echoes. And the echoes will guide you." She reached into her pocket and handed Zara a folded cloth. Inside lay a carved serpent pendant, 2 heads, twisted together in eternal motion. "Time for the next keeper to carry the mark," she said. Zara placed it over her heart. Then she stepped alone into the forest. Not as a visitor. Not as a skeptic. But as a keeper. The trees whispered her name in rustling leaves and bird calls. A soft hiss echoed through the undergrowth. The spirit was watching, not to test, but to walk beside her. She smiled and whispered back, "I hear you." And somewhere deeper in the forest, something smiled too. The end. Or, maybe, the beginning.